This right here is uranium. This is a big block of lead, and this is an asbestos tile. All low VOC products. Zero VOC products, actually. VOCs are bad for you. That's true, and it's good to avoid them. But saying that a product is low VOC and equating that to being a healthy product is just simply two separate things. Big chemical companies understand that with the right marketing on their cans of paint or whatever other product it is, it can put people's minds at ease, even if the product is not actually good for them. So let's break down what actually matters. The reason chemical companies can get away with making you feel as though you're getting something healthy when you're not is because it's hard to understand, all right? So let's break it down really simple what VOCs do. They are a category of chemical inside of products. They're just one category of it, all right? So let's talk about shellac. Shellac is made from beetles. It's made from the female lac beetle. They take these beetles, they grind up their shells, all right? It's a beetle massacre. Then they mix those shells with alcohol. And what you get is shellac. We can take this nice amber colored finish and we can dip our brush in it. We can coat whatever products we want, usually wood products. And what happens? The alcohol dries very quickly. It goes away. It evaporates into the air and we're left with a shellac coating, which essentially is the beetle shell. Now I'm oversimplifying a bit here and I'm not a chemist, but most of the time VOCs are playing the role of dissolving solids and then allowing you to spread them over a surface, and then they evaporate. They go away and you're left with a coating. All right? The VOCs can also be a byproduct of chemical reactions that take place. So they might not even be an ingredient in the can, but they can be created by a chemical reaction takes place when you install a certain product. The key word here is volatile. All right? The beetle shells are not volatile. All right? They are going to stay where I put them. The beetle shells are not going anywhere. But the alcohol, on the other hand, as soon as it gets the chance to escape, it's going to evaporate. It's going to go away. It's not permanently bound to these beetle shells. Our lead and our asbestos are also like the beetle shell in that they're stable. They're not trying to evaporate into the air, but they still do get into the air. All right? When we walk on them, when we brush up against them, we're constantly wearing everything down around us and it's entering the air through the dust. All right? And so we need to take a really good look at what's going to be left over after the VOCs evaporate, after they're gone. What am I still going to be living around? Some of the most important chemical classes that are still going to be left on your wall, even after the drying process is complete and the off-gassing process is complete, is you're going to have biocides, you're going to have preservatives. These are needed in a can of paint in order to keep it from molding, to keep it from going bad. In that can of paint, we've got organic matter, probably just a little bit of oxygen in the top, and then you've got all of this liquid, all right? Those are perfect circumstances to grow mold, to grow bacteria. So a lot of the low VOC products actually end up having way more biocides in them actually, because VOCs oftentimes are preservatives in the products that they're in. They keep them from going bad. So as you get rid of them, you've got to increase the levels of other things to keep mold and bacteria from growing. So I'm not going to name off the actual compounds. I'm not a chemist. It's too deep for this video. But you need to know, a lot of the biocides used are very much not good for you, all right? They can cause skin problems. They can cause asthma. They can mess with your lungs, you know, your breathing system. Some are actually cancer causing, although that's a minority of them. And formaldehyde can actually be a byproduct of these biocides breaking down, which they do over time. The second thing that we're going to have is plasticizers. Plasticizers are what's used to make plastic usable. Plastic is very hard on its own. So if I want to use plastic for my LVP floor, I'm going to need a plasticizer to make it bendy enough to be usable. I'm also going to need these plasticizers in my paint, all right? Our latex-based paints are essentially plastic. It's a thin layer of plastic on the wall. So I need to take a bunch of little polymers, tiny pieces of plastic, and get them to kind of melt and come together. I'm going to use a plasticizer to do that. The problem with plasticizers is that they are often phthalates, all right? And phthalates disrupt your hormone system. And there's a lot of research done on this. There's a number of other categories of chemicals I could go over, but the third and last one I'll go over is PFAS, or forever chemicals. These are chemicals that your body doesn't know how to get rid of, and once they get in, they're not going anywhere. They are used in a lot of products in very small amounts, all right? But they are linked to birth defects and to cancer. There's a good movie on this called Dark Waters where DuPont essentially poisoned a small town because they let forever chemicals get in the drinking water. Really good movie. And what's really important to understand about forever chemicals specifically is that even the tiniest amount is very dangerous. The safe level in your drinking water, for example, set by the EPA, is 4 parts per trillion. That's an amount that's so small I can't even comprehend it. So if you're thinking, well, this stuff is stable, it doesn't really matter, it does matter because small amounts can still be a problem, all right? So the things inside of your house, they seem like they're undisturbed at first glance, but they're not, okay? So here, let's say this is the inside of your living room, and whenever someone comes over, your dog, he runs over, he jumps up on the window, and he puts his paws up there. He's kind of scratching the wall. We're getting scratches everywhere. Beautiful sketch, I know. And then your cat, they do the same thing. They're jumping up on the ledge. I have this problem at home, and there's little cat scratches in the finish. And then your kids, they walk by, and they kind of scratch the drywall with their backpack. That paint is breaking down. That finish is breaking down. The floor that you're walking on, whether it's a plastic LVP floor, or it's a wood floor that's finished in a plastic coating, which, surprise, pretty much all wood coatings are plastic, it's breaking down. It is getting into your air through dust. It's getting into your body through dust. So just because a chemical does an off-gas doesn't mean it's not going to get into your body. It's just a much slower cycle. And I don't think we really have any good way of knowing how these chemicals that break down slowly and in such small amounts are going to affect our health. But what about the safety data sheet? Most of you guys probably know what this is, but if you don't, with every paint or any other product like that that's for sale, there'll be a safety data sheet available. You can go to Home Depot's website, for example, find the product you want to buy, and if you look down in the description, you'll be able to download a safety data sheet. On that sheet, it's going to tell you about the toxic chemicals inside of the product. But there's some problems with this. There's about 85,000 chemicals in use today, all right? It's the EPA's job to tell us whether these things are safe or not. Of these 85,000, they've told us that around 1,000 of them are probably not safe. This 1,000-ish chemical list is not like some nice list you can go reference on the EPA's website, but it's laughably low. And that's because most people don't know this, but the chemical industry self-regulates. Chemicals, when they come on the market, are assumed safe. That means they don't have to study them long-term for toxicity. In the case of DuPont with the Teflon, they knew it was bad for a very long time. They knew it was causing cancer and birth defects, and they just classified it. They hid it. So there has to be a mass exposure and oftentimes lawsuits for any type of regulation to come into play. This makes the EPA next to useless when it comes to protecting the public from toxic chemicals. This makes your SDS sheet practically useless except for covering the most known and regulated toxins, of which there are probably thousands and thousands others that are not on there yet, and they won't be on there until a bunch of people are injured or killed from it and there's a lawsuit, and then finally some regulation happens. That's how the chemical industry works. If you want a comparison, just look into how we do things with chemicals versus places like Europe. One of the most important concepts you can understand is reliability and how these VOCs off-gas. Let's take a look at alcohol and formaldehyde. Alcohol is used in shellac. The alcohol, when you brush this stuff on, evaporates super quickly. Shellac dries very, very fast, and those fumes will leave your house pretty quick if you just open the doors. The VOC off-gassing process happens incredibly fast and incredibly reliably. So while shellac is going to be very, very high in VOC, it's actually a far more natural product that living around it long term, you don't have to worry about it because it finished off-gassing and it's not going to pollute your air. On the other hand, formaldehyde is in everything, all right? It's in your cabinets, it's in your trim, it's in anything that was glued together pretty much, and other things. But anything you reach out and touch in your house, there's like a 70% chance it has formaldehyde in it. Now, formaldehyde could come in high amounts or low amounts, all right? So it could be in a high VOC product or a low VOC product. But the problem with it is that it doesn't reliably off-gas at all. It happens slowly. Sometimes it binds back with the substance it's with, then it releases later. That's why it's a problem if you use a bunch of engineered wood products and you have OSB and MDF cabinets and all these things. They're all very high in formaldehyde, and it just slowly pollutes the air over time. You can't move out and have the work done and then just move back in a week or a month later and think that your air quality is not going to be affected. It's always going to be affected. Now it's going to decrease with time, but in small amounts, it's just going to continue to pollute your air. So you can see that a huge amount of the risk with a reliably off-gassing product, and even one that's not, is for the contractor. The guy doing the work is the one who needs to protect himself more than anybody. You can move out of the house, you can open the windows, you can let those fumes get out, let those VOCs get out, and you've drastically minimized the risk of the VOCs to you. After that, you've got to understand what is left after the VOCs go away. We talked about that a little bit. And the only way you're really going to do that is with an ingredient list, all right? If a company provides the ingredient list, they're highly committed to a healthy product because they want you to actually know what's in it. They care about what's in it. If you just get on and search healthy paints or healthy finishes, AFM Safe Coat will oftentimes be one of the ones that pops up right away. They tell you what the ingredients are in their products. That's super important, all right? Products that look healthy but don't actually say what's in them, I mean, that's really just marketing at that point. That's what we talked about with companies preying on the fact that this stuff is hard to understand. I would generally avoid those products if possible. Or if you are going to use them, just don't be under the assumption that they're actually that much better for you. And lastly, guys, and this is the unbeatable method, is use as many natural products as you can. The surfaces around you, I think, should get A1 priority for getting natural products inside of your house. You're probably not going to be able to afford to do everything perfectly healthy, but if you can do your flooring, you can do your walls, you can do the things that are most surrounding you in natural products, I think that's optimal. So number one, we've got our walls. If we can swap that drywall out for plaster finishes, nobody is doing this, but I think it will make a comeback. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have a hard time either figuring it out how to do it yourself or finding someone to do it, because plaster is just not really something we use anymore. When I talk about plaster, I don't mean gypsum-based plasters. I'm talking about either lime or clay-based plasters. They are vapor open if you use a pigment to finish with the last coat. So what you actually do is you do a 3-coat system, and on the 3rd coat, you put that pigment, the color you want your walls to be in that, and then you don't have to paint the wall. Because what do we know about paint? It closes the pores up. It takes a surface that could be, very open to vapor coming through, and then it just closes up its ability. If you are going to paint things, try to use more natural paints. You can use linseed paints if it's over wood. Linseed paints don't work over drywall, by the way, but if you do have drywall, consider, going with a healthier latex-based paint that actually tells you what's in it. And then lastly, for your natural wood finishes, guys, these have been finished for hundreds of years with oil products. And when I say oil, I'm talking linseed oil and other natural oils that, linseed oil is from flaxseed. There's food grade versions of linseed oil called flax oil that we would actually consume. But if it says linseed, it usually means it is not for consumption. It's not going to be as high of a grade. But I personally have made my own finish not long ago. I made it from linseed oil, pine rosin, and beeswax. I heated the whole thing up, mixed it together, and I made a penetrating finish. It worked pretty well, and I might keep you updated on that if I continue to develop it. If you're using wood, use real wood. Don't use engineered wood. Don't use finger joint wood. Definitely don't use MDF. And as far as the drywall replacement goes, you can do tongue and groove on your walls, and you can do it directly over the stud. But there's a lot of really, really cool options, guys. And it might feel a little overwhelming, I know. So I actually made a free guide, and it's got all sorts of information, and it breaks it down so simple to help you understand the alternative building methods, the things that you can't just call up your local contractor and ask him to do, and you can't just go to Home Depot and buy the products, the things that we used to do 100 years ago, but they're being forgotten from history. So we're gonna go over things like plaster. We're gonna go over things like your alternative paints, your alternative insulations. I'm gonna rank them on how toxic they are, how likely they are to contribute to a mold problem, and I'll also tell you roughly how much the materials cost, because you gotta be able to figure out what you can actually afford in your budget. So I want to make this really simple. Click the link down below in the description, and you'll have to input your email and it'll get emailed over to you. Don't worry, I won't spam you a bunch. But if you're interested in this type of stuff, I would highly encourage you to go get that free guide and see what alternative methods you could use to make your house healthier.